You're watching the Sports Central Showdown.
All right, welcome to the Sports Central Showdown. It's your boy Darren Haynes, and we're about to break down a big topic when it comes down to betting in sports. I have my man Mark Medina, who covers everything from all sports, especially the NBA, on CBS-LA. You can see him on all different channels as well, breaking down the Lakers. We also have my man Alex Hutton from the Sports Tribune, also a PA here at CBS-LA. Both of these guys know their stuff, especially around the NBA. So let's get straight into it. Are the 90s Bulls the best dynasty in sports history? Alex, I'm going to start with you. Go.
Darren, yes, the 90s Bulls are the best sports dynasty in NBA history, and here's why. I believe that three-peating in the modern NBA, which we'll call that sort of the 80s onward, I believe that three-peating in the NBA is maybe the most difficult thing to do in sports. And the 90s Bulls did it twice. That is such an unbelievable accomplishment. Over 6 championships in 8 years. You know, if Michael Jordan doesn't go away for a couple of years, maybe they win 8 in a row. Who knows? I'm not going to base this on hypotheticals, but it's crazy to think about just how dominant they were in the 90s that we can even consider that. You know, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, an unbelievable supporting cast, arguably the greatest coach of all time, and that guy right there, and Phil Jackson. Just an unbelievable confluence of factors that led them to 2 three-peats. One of the most difficult accomplishments I think that any team has ever done, plus the cultural impact that they had in the 90s adds to it and just puts them on a different level above pretty much any other team in NBA history and sports history for that matter.
All right, great point there, Alex. What about you, Mark?
Well, Darren, Alex, I will concede that the Bulls are the best NBA dynasty, and if the 90s Bulls played the mid-2000s Golden State Warriors, they would win that head-to-head matchup. But I would argue that the Golden State Warriors were a better run dynasty. They had 5 NBA Finals appearances consecutively. They were better run as an organization from top to bottom. They had front office synergy with Steve Kerr. With the Bulls, there was a lot of infighting between Jerry Krause and Phil Jackson. Player to player, Michael Jordan is the best player of all time, but Steph Curry is a better leader. He empowered his teammates while Michael Jordan mostly demeaned them. They also had better number 2 options. Sometimes it was Steph Curry or Kevin Durant or vice versa, and they were able to make that work. Clearly with the Bulls, it was Scottie Pippen as number 2 and Michael Jordan as number 1. And I also think that when you're looking at the Warriors' shortcomings, there are a lot of external circumstances that you have to keep in mind here. They not only beat the Chicago Bulls for the regular season record in 2015-16, I would argue that they would have won the NBA championship in 2016, if not for some key injuries. Steph Curry wasn't fully himself. He had some knee issues with his MCL. Andrew Bogut had a season-ending knee injury in Game 5. Draymond Green had that Game 5 suspension. It wasn't because of his altercation with LeBron James. It was more just the fact that he accumulated flagrant foul points. So you remove all those things, they would have won the championship in 2016. How about in 2019? If Kevin Durant didn't tear his Achilles in Game 5, if Klay Thompson didn't tear his ACL in Game 6, the Warriors would have won that championship. And I know that there is a danger of getting into hypotheticals, but those are externally valid circumstances that explain why that the Warriors didn't win even more championships than they actually did.
I mean, it's funny, both of you guys bring up these hypotheticals, like what if Jordan didn't retire? You know, what if Durant did this, or this guy didn't get hurt there? But let's get straight to it on this one, because Mark, you kind of touched on it a little bit. We're going to touch on it some more, but Alex, I want you to go first. If we got those 90 Bulls and we got those Warriors, you know, in the 2000 teens, and they played each other, let's say under the same rules, who do you have winning that game, Alex?
That's so tough to say because they played such different styles. You know, the NBA,
but they got to play.
Such a different place than it was in the 2010s. I mean, boy. I'm probably giving it to the 90s Bulls. I think Michael Jordan, just the most killer instinct player of all time. Any challenge he takes on, he's going to do whatever it takes to win that, and he's just not going to let his team lose that game or that series, depending on how we're framing this matchup. But I think the things about those Warriors teams, as great as they were, is they never had a three-peat, which really sets the Bulls apart in an iconic kind of way. And I think when you look at the sort of defining moments of that era, what is one that always is going to come back to? Mark, you touched on a little bit. blowing that 3-1 lead to Cleveland, becoming the first team, and to this day, only team ever to blow a 3-1 lead in the finals. They accomplished all these other incredible things, 4 championships in 8 years. That's an unbelievable accomplishment. But when you go through the run of their dynasty, that's always going to stick out like a sore thumb. And the 90s Bulls don't have that moment of failure, I think, in the same way that the Warriors do, where they were sort of sunk to their lowest point amidst all of this. And I think that's a big thing on the Bulls. They were, apart from those 2 years where Jordan stepped away, they were winning really, really consistently.
Great point there. All right, Mark, what do you think? Talk a little bit more. Those two teams had to go head to head.
Yeah, it would have been an epic matchup. I would have given the Bulls the edge, but it would have been very, very close. Here's why. Regardless of today's rules, Steph Curry would have still taken a lot of threes. He would have made a lot. Same thing with Klay Thompson. You presume that you add Kevin Durant in there. Statistically, there is a book behind me in this bookshelf, Dynasty, written by a good friend of mine, Marcus Thompson with The Athletic. He had a great nugget in that book that said that with Steph and Durant, for 3 consecutive years, they had the highest offensive rating of any 2 players together in the NBA who played at least 1,000 minutes. And regardless if it's Steph's three-point ball or Kevin Durant's mid-range mastery, you can translate that into the 90s era, and that would have been unstoppable. Here's where it would have been challenging. Michael Jordan, obviously, and even though he's playing in a different era, we saw that like in 1992 when he went up against Clyde Drexler. He can make a lot of threes, 6 to be exact. But I think that everything else, you can make a case that it would even out. Draymond Green, Dennis Rodman, great defenders. They probably would have toppled on each other and been in a race to see who could get more technicals and ejections. But those 2 players alone would have set the tone for the defensive intensity. The centers, they're not game-changing all-star type players, but very respectable. When you're looking at the Bulls end, Luke Longley, Bill Wennington, Bill Cartwright in the first three-peat era, great utility guys, great screen setters, great energy type players. How about with the Warriors? David West, Zaza Pachulia, JaVale McGee. They all were lob threats, great passers, great screen setters. But you know what? Here is an X factor that maybe could have tilted the scale for the Warriors. Andre Iguodala, ultimate team guy, great scorer, all-star caliber player, but was willing to come off the bench, and he played great defense. He won Finals MVP in 2015, not because he stopped LeBron James. LeBron James still had a very great final showing, even so much that people were comparing to how he played to the great Jerry West in the 1969 Finals, but his numbers were inefficient. I wouldn't be surprised that Andre would have been able to limit Michael Jordan or really anyone else, relatively speaking, from an efficiency standpoint. So as much as I'm thinking out loud, the Bulls would have that edge in a head-to-head matchup. I wouldn't be surprised that the Warriors pulled off that upset because of Iguodala being that great X factor.
Before we get to our 24-second shot clock, where we kind of wind things down, just real quick, Mark, like if we get Jordan, you mentioned the 6 3-pointers he hit, he's shrugging his shoulders. And then you get Steph Curry. You have these 2 big, icons in their particular franchise. But when we look at the overall dynasty, which player do you think had the most global impact to really change the game and affect the way players play right now? Because everybody wanted to be like Mike at one point. Now everybody's shooting threes.
Yeah, it's a tough debate. It's very apples and oranges, though. But I think when you're looking at the history of the NBA, it's still Michael Jordan. He had this enduring quality that hit a lot of buttons. He had the competitive intensity. He had, the patented fadeaway jumper. He had, especially in his prime, the ability to fly in the air and wag his tongue and dunk. And then I think it's also just his role in globalizing the sport with the 92 Dream Team as well as the Bulls. So Steph Curry, he's definitely changed the game with how well he shoots threes. He's another global superstar, but then and now, Michael Jordan has had that enduring impact.
Alex, it looks like Mark's leaning on your side a little bit. What can you add to that?
I think when you compare Michael Jordan and Steph, I think it's an apt comparison. I think the best way to say would be Steph changed the game of basketball with the 3 shooting and opening up the floor and everything he did for that. But Michael Jordan changed both the game and the business of basketball. He was able to affect it on every level. And as impactful as Steph has been on the court, I'm not sure he has the same off-court impact that Michael Jordan was able to have in the 80s and the 90s.
All right. 24-second clock. I need you guys to give you your final point on why you feel like the 90s Bulls were the best dynasty in sports history. Alex, go.
Well, I want to start, we talked about how well run the Warriors were. I'm reminded of the game in the 2018-19 season against the Clippers where Draymond Green and Kevin Durant blew up at each other, effectively started the beginning of the end for that run of things. Then in 2022, when Draymond Green threw a punch at Jordan Poole during practice and things fell apart there. Dynasties have a way of beating themselves up sometimes. And the Bulls certainly did do some of that. I'm well aware of that. But they got in 2 three-peats in the meantime, 6 championships in 8 years. In the modern NBA, hard to say that there's ever been a better sports accomplishment for a dynasty than that.
Great point. You went well over your shot clock. Yeah, shot clock.
I usually go under,
violation.
so I'm making up for the back time I had.
All right, Mark, 24-second clock for you, man. What's your final point?
Well, Darren, real quick here. As you all know, I'm pro Team Bulls, but the Warriors have been better run as an organization. 2 things to keep in mind. Yes, Draymond Green and Kevin Durant had that blow up in 2018-19. It didn't prevent them from getting the finals. And again, they fell short to the Toronto Raptors, not just because Kawhi Leonard was playing really well, but key injuries to Durant, Clay. So they could have won a championship in spite of that. They won a championship without Kevin Durant in 2022 before the Jordan Poole punch. That season alone, Jordan Poole was playing really well. Same thing with Draymond Green. And I know that there's a lot of what ifs about Michael Jordan. If he decided not to retire the first time, play baseball, what would have happened? I don't think you can guarantee that they would have won a championship, let alone get back to the finals, because we've seen just the wear and tear and attrition and how that can factor into a team's ability to defend a championship. And those 2 seasons when Michael Jordan was out of the NBA, the Houston Rockets won for a reason. Hakeem Olajuwon was the best big in the NBA, and they had such a great force of a team from top to bottom. So, I think that you have to keep in mind on why the Warriors fell short with the number of championships. They went through 5 consecutive finals, and when you're going through that number of run, season after season after season, the wear and toll of an NBA season wears on you.
Great point again. Shot clock violation on you as well. But you guys both have made.
I mean,
you guys have made great points. The only thing that is a fact though is that the '90s Bulls will never play the Warriors from the 2000 teens. But this debate will continue for a lifetime. Alex, Mark, appreciate you guys for joining the Sports Central Showdown. You guys really broke it down really well.
You're watching the Sports Central Showdown.